Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Wargaming Star Wars Legion Upgrade Review and Rankings, a series that goes over the potential upgrades that you can equip your units with, and how they stack up against one another. And today we are going to be looking at the comms upgrades, which are a little bit more niche here. But as always, this is going to serve as a living document, one that is updated as points are adjusted and more cards are released. And down the road, we will come back and take a look at this, potentially adjusting our previous rankings while adding new ones. And I think that is more important to consider when we're looking at the comms upgrades here, as these tend to be a lot more black and white than the previous gear and training upgrades we've looked at, as they interact very differently depending on what unit they're equipped on, and even some factions such as the Trade Federation not only have more access to comms upgrades, but make far better use of them. So much like the Force Powers upgrade, the comms are going to be ranked on a curve relative to this specific upgrade, and some of our cards might be ranking extremely high despite the fact that they are useless on a relatively large amount of units. Meanwhile, in other synergies, they will exist as auto-include cards. But with that discrepancy out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the comms upgrades. And first up here, we are going to have a command control array, a vehicle-only upgrade that will increase your coordinate range from 1 to 2, essentially doubling it. And at just 2 points, this is going to be an S tier card for me, but a great example of one of those cards that is more or less useless on some units, but a must-take on others. For example, you would never throw this onto a Saber Tank, because the Saber Tank for the time being does not have the coordinate keyword, meaning this card's benefits will not come into effect. However, if you take this card and put it onto something like an AAT with an OOM pilot, or the Stap Riders, and you're going to greatly increase that coordinate ability throughout your army, and further ensure that your entire army is going to get that face-up order token through coordination. And again, at just 2 points, it is pretty much an auto-include in those scenarios. But after that, we're going to have our next upgrade, which is a little bit less of a specialized comms upgrade, and has been around for a while now, and that is going to be the Comms Jammer. And at 5 points, this is going to allow you to block enemy units at range 1 from being issued orders, unless they're issuing that order to themselves. And this card will be ranking in at a high B tier for me. It can be quite effective at sabotaging your opponents, and this will work well on things like speeder bikes or melee units who will be up close and in your opponent's face. But that also turns these units into incredibly high profile targets that your enemy will likely focus fire and gun down. On top of that, 5 points is starting to push that threshold of cost efficiency, and there's a lot of other 5-point upgrades that you can equip that are going to be a lot more reliable, as they'll likely be far less reliant on things like unit positioning and your opponent's command card plays. So while I do think this card is potentially quite powerful, it is something that requires a lot of finesse and also some luck to pull off properly, and that really holds it back in my opinion. But after that, we are going to have the Comms Relay upgrade, which is a non-emplacement trooper unit only card that will allow you, when issued an order, to instead push that order along onto another friendly unit at range 1 to 2. And this card is definitely an A tier card for me. It doesn't have a very good generalist role, but it fits in very well on certain units, especially support units, and can reliably get you face-up order tokens on units that you need to activate the most. The best example of this would be in, say, a vehicle-oriented list, where you want a squad to support and maybe even repair your vehicle, allowing them to push orders onto those vehicles and get them face-up order tokens, and perhaps even trigger something like Linked Targeting Array, which is very good when you consider how restrictive some of the better command cards in Star Wars Legion can be, usually targeting troopers. And that's just one example of many different synergies in which you can include a comms relay in your list, but you really do need to find the proper unit to put it on. There's a lot of heroes with comms upgrades who don't really benefit from pushing their order off of them, and you're really going to need to be conscious of your list building and deployment should you want to use this card, as this is an upgrade that very much will come into play during the conceptual phase of your battle. And next up, we are going to have HQ Uplink, a 10-point card that is exhaustible and will simply allow you to issue an order to yourself. And this card is definitely going to be A tier for me. There's a lot of great uses for this card, especially in units with Coordinate, or other things that want to stack exhaustible cards and perhaps take recovery actions throughout the course of a match to make more use of their 10-point investment. And that really is the only reason this card is an S tier for me, is that it's very expensive, and I think this card can be a bit of a sand trap for some players. Yes, it's really good having face-up order tokens, but they aren't always necessary 100% of the time. And I do see a lot of players getting carried away with that concept. Yes, it is great to have a B1 Battle Droid squad that can tap this card, and then start up that daisy chain coordinate to a section of your army that has been segregated from your commander. But what if your opponent targets that squad and wipes them off the battlefield before they can do that? Or what if I simply put my B1s behind line of sight obscuring terrain, meaning they don't resort to AI attack and I can just perform activations naturally? Don't get me wrong, I think this card is really good and has some fantastic uses in Legion, but I do tend to see it a little bit overvalued and show up in a lot of lists where those 10 points could have been better spent elsewhere. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this one, but I'm going to go ahead and say that 1, this is my opinion, and then 2, also, I am still giving it an A ranking. I don't think it's a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. But that will move us along to our next upgrade, which is going to be Integrated Comms Antenna, a 3-point upgrade that can only be equipped on droid troopers, and will increase the range in which they can receive orders from commanders and operatives, from the standard range 3 up to range 4. And regrettably, this card will be a D tier upgrade from me. It's pretty much the inverse of Commanding Presence, where rather than your commander being able to issue orders at range 4 to any unit in your faction, instead this one unit will be able to receive those orders at range 1 to 4. And at just 2 points less, there's really no benefit here. I think this card should honestly be dropped to 2 or maybe even just 1 point cost, because as things currently stand, you get this same benefit in a much more utilitarian manner with Commanding Presence. Or you can opt out for the much more efficient version of this card, which is the long-range comlinks, both of which are just 2 points more, and do the same job significantly better. But next up, we are going to have the Linked Targeting Array upgrade, and this will be a 5-point upgrade accessible to emplacement troopers and vehicles only, that will give them Target 1, meaning every time they're issued an order, they will gain an aim token, and this will certainly be an S tier card for me. No, it does not belong on every vehicle, and slapping it onto things like speeders or ATRTs may not be the best use of your points, but there's a lot of larger vehicles in Star Wars Legion that are starting to become more relevant. And in lists that revolve around those vehicles, such as the TX Saber Tank, you likely will be prioritizing giving them face-up order tokens. And that's going to allow this 5-point upgrade to really stack up those aim tokens throughout the course of a game, and ensuring that vehicle is going to be getting its points worth and damage out. And with things like Comms Relay and Authoritative, this card's usability only increases. And lastly, we are going to have the Long Range Comlink upgrade, as mentioned earlier. And at 5 points, this card is going to allow you to receive orders from an operative or commander, regardless of their range. So yeah, for just 2 points more, this is basically going to take that 1 range increase from Integrated Comms Antenna, and just bump it up to infinite. And that will rank this card in at B tier for me. It's something that's still not wholly necessary, and I don't really find myself ever putting it into a list. But should you have that scenario where your B1 army ends up kind of segregated from your commander, this is less expensive than HQ Uplink and more reliable than Integrated Comms Antenna. And besides that B1 analogy, I think there are other units, such as infiltrators or speeders, who will also make decent use of this card. It's not the best use of 5 points overall, but it definitely acts as a good yin to Commanding Presence's yang, all while Integrated Comms Antenna is just kind of awkwardly watching from the corner of the room, waiting for that points decrease. So yeah, there are a few cards in the comms upgrade that are more or less workarounds to the same situation, and which ones will prove to be the best point investment for you is going to require you to tailor your list properly and know your playbook before entering the battle. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are there any upgrades that I either over or underestimated? I'm sure HQ Uplink will be a point of controversy, but as you guys know, the more expensive an upgrade gets, the less I tend to like it. Just be sure to be civil when discussing it. And if you liked the video, go ahead, leave a like, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, all that fun stuff. And until next time guys, take care.